Hello and welcome to Bane of Morgoth Miniatures. I decided after some goading from some friends to get a little bit of a painting channel going. Talk about some of the different techniques and ideas that I think about when I start painting, and kind of just get a chance to make something for you as well as for myself. Problem I was having is when I was doing commission work, I ran into, well, I needed to be doing it more than just when I could record. So I decided let's deviate. Let's pick something fun and with no time crunch. So what I'm going to do is start working on this guy here. Kind of a fun little character here. I'm going to go for like a Siberian tiger, kind of the white tiger feeling. As you can see, he's got a bit of snowflake work and some other things going on here. This kind of fun little cute model. Decided I'd paint it for my wife, since she is a fan of little cute things and she has space on her desk at work that she needs a little brightening of her day. So one of the main things that I think about when I paint is colors, which is kind of a duh when you think about it. But I think we spend too much time thinking about every single element of the model before we just get involved, before we get started on the model and start working. So I know that the prominent colors that are going to happen on this model are blues and purples, because those are my wife's favorite colors. So that's what I started with, just mapping out some simple highlights, some shadow work. If you flip this upside down and get a look into the purples underneath for all of the shadow work as opposed to just blacks. Finding a shadow color that's not just black can instantly amplify your whole painting. If you look at shadows in real life, they're hardly ever black. They're often a mixture of colors that lead to that point. Now, some of the deep, real dark shadows will get all the way to black, but other than that, dark purples reading against a brighter model will read as dark, as a shadow. So that's kind of my concept moving forward on this. Unfortunately, tonight, a lot of times when you start out a model, you are working on bases. You're basing out all of your different base coats of your model. So after I got done with this particular airbrushing step, I find myself at a point where I need to start mapping out things. So while I'm mapping out all the different colors that are going to go into this kind of fun little model, I wanted to talk about some other things that I think about when I'm painting. And the first one is inside to out. Oftentimes when people are painting, they want to just throw paint on the model in any order, whatever thing strikes them. And that can work, but the problem with that is oftentimes you get into a problem situation. And that problem situation is you've painted something beautifully. Let's take him, for example. If I spend a ton of time painting out and around him, his scarf, all of this work really well done, and then I need to get into his face, it's going to cause some problems because I might bump into that scarf. I might bump into this around, or especially if I spend a ton of time in on this gem and then have to get in around all of these things. The smaller the model, the more that this inside to out step matters. This is actually kind of a very forgiving model, and going to be more of a fun one for me than a commission piece or something more serious. But it's going to apply in the same way. I need to make sure that where I'm focusing is in to out. So something you'll see as I paint more and more on this channel is that I'm always choosing different shadow colors. Black is very rarely a shadow color for me. It's the base. You can see there's black here because the whole model was primed in black, just to make sure if there was any shadows that I missed, that they would come up as dark as opposed to the gray resin that I was using. Now, as we are working on some of this, get a little bit of paint here, get us rolling. I'll be the first to say that I'm certainly not a professional painter. This has been a hobby for me for the last probably 3 years or so now. But something I've always enjoyed about painting is the just natural expression that you can bring to something. Someone else could pick this model up and they might have started with reds and greens and other vibrant colors as opposed to these cooler colors that I'm going to be working with. And I think that's one of the best things about painting, in my opinion, is that everyone who picks something up can go at it in a different way, and there's not necessarily a right or a wrong answer. Now, I think there's some things that lean one direction, like if you look at this fine little snowflake here, we probably don't necessarily want to make that fire, but if you have a concept or an idea in your mind and that's where it's leading you, then don't be afraid to push a little bit of the social norm. Don't think, oh, this is a frost guy, it has to be frost. I'm painting it frost because it's the color scheme that my wife wanted. But when it comes to different things, we need to not always fall into the patterns that everyone else wants us to. Now, some little tips and tricks as we're working along is sometimes you will run into a bit of overspill. And if you look right here, I got a little excess brown onto that blue. And what I need to do to clean that up is just grab a little water and do a little bit of whisking away right there. Keeping a damp brush nearby can be very beneficial toward the overall process of how fast you can work and how to clean up errors. Oftentimes people won't clean up their errors quickly enough, and that causes for them to try and have to color match or to find what colors they were using before, and maybe if it's a mix, or in my case, if it's an airbrush portion of the model, you can be in a real pickle and you don't want to be there. Now, I think as we're working across this, another thing that I run into a lot with people is something I've heard called analysis paralysis. And if you're familiar with analysis paralysis, it's as simple as this. You have to make a decision, and there's choices, quite a few of them. What color am I painting this? What color am I painting that? What color am I painting the weapon? What is this going to be? And as we take the time to analyze and think, instead of coming to a conclusion or a thought that is concrete and we move forward on it, we run through all of the different options over and over and over and over again. And as we do that, we never make a decision at all. Now, before I picked up this model and started painting it for you all right now, I was thinking about this cloak. And it's something I can kind of do absentmindedly while I talk. It's something I do often when I'm painting at my local game store. Just kind of pick some absent-minded things while I'm talking through things for classes. And I was thinking I was going to start off gray and work up to whites and work up to some more vibrant colors. But the problem is I'm going to have a white base, which here, little off-screen action here. I have the cute little base that he stands on. And it's got a little gem and some snowflakes and a snowdrift. And that whole base is going to be white. Now the problem is if I make this white and him white and the base white, then soon I'm going to have a ton of one color. And that doesn't necessarily need to be the case. I can craft a multiple step color scheme kind of on the fly. As long as I don't choose colors that are going to run into the same level of vibrancy. Now, there's a ton of kind of catchwords for painting. See, I'm going to do that little cleanup step again. Right there, that brown's getting a bit heavy. Got a little heavy-handed there, got it on the cloak. Get that damp brush in there, boom. Before it can dry, we're ready to roll. Back to vibrancy. As we're working on different steps, and I'm just going to mess up multiple times there. We need to avoid having everything be the same vibrancy. Now, This model that I'm working on is a bit of like a chibi model, kind of a silly, more of a fun model. And that's fine for everything to be a little more cartoony or vibrant. But especially when you're working into some grimmer models, you want to be careful that not everything is bright. Because as we learned from The Incredibles and Syndrome, if everyone is incredible, then no one will be. It's the exact same way when it comes to colors. If everything is vibrant, then nothing is vibrant. So we need to make sure that we are determining where are my brightest spots going to be on this model. Now, it doesn't look like it, but right here is going to be a massively bright spot on this model because it's the face of my model. And oftentimes you need to create the focal point for where your model, or for where your viewer's eyes are going to look at your model. And you're going to choose that on a few different factors. One of which is what's front and center is almost always something in here is going to pull people. The ways you can change that from being true is if you create a vibrant color. Naturally, we are attracted to light colors, bright colors. So the brighter the color that we establish somewhere, the more quickly someone is going to look at that area. Sorry, getting a little off screen here. As we work in some of these top edges. And you can be a little messy. Oftentimes I see people that are just trying to always be as precise and clean, which there's really no problem if you want to be cleaner. But the thing with being clean is it often inhibits how fast you can move. And if you can clean up after yourself quickly like this, it can lead to quicker results with just a little bit of cleanup time, as opposed to slaving over every brush stroke having to be perfect. Now you'll notice as I paint, I choose a ton of time. I choose a ton of different spots for aiming or for controlling my brush. So a free hand is only so steady, but if you can, bracing like this can create a very stable point. Now this is not painted at all, and that's excellent, because if all the paint got rubbed off of this, it wouldn't matter. I could reprime it black with just a simple brush work and it'd be done, and I can move forward from that. But as we are working, we want to make sure we are as stable as possible. Down below here, my wrists are leaning against the table, so there's only a few inches here up to my hands that are unstable. And as I'm working, creating those stable points, we'll call them triangles oftentimes. This point to down here to over here creates a triangle of stability. And if you tried to paint while walking around, you'd lose so much stability and so much precision, especially for some of the smaller stuff. Now, the last thing I want to talk about in this video, and I'll catch you next week, it's going to be a short one for this, is painting the room. And I think painting the room is an important analogy as we address painting. Think about you're standing in any room, your office, a large building, a conference room, your bedroom. And I tasked you with painting all the walls. Now, there's some different ways you could go about that. But one key concept that I want to talk about in that analogy is, if I gave you a 4-inch chalk brush, you know, your classic little brush to paint smaller things like trim and windows and those sort of things, and I gave you an 18-inch roller, what do you think you'd start with? Well, of course you'd start with the 18-inch roller. And in that 18-inch roller, you'd find that it's much easier to get tons of coverage, to do all of the major space work. And that's what you're doing with models like this. You're aiming for the major spaces, covering as much as you can with a bigger brush. Now, I've got a nice pointed brush here. That's going to be for later work, but this stuff is best done with a bigger, less detailed brush. So when you're painting the room, don't paint your whole model with a really tiny brush. It's a ton of work. If you want to do that, go for it. But if you're looking for how do I get some things done faster, this is going to be the way that's going to help you in a quick and tangible way starting on the next model you want to work on. Pick up a little bigger brush. Be a little less accurate unless you need to be accurate. I'm taking care not to get all on this cloth, but everything on his fur, his face, and none of that matters to get clean because it's all going to get painted later. Well, I hope this was more than just me chucking a bunch of words at you. I hope there were some good thoughts and some interesting ideas for you. That's going to wrap up the first session here. Have a good night, and hope to see you back at the channel. Goodbye.